It was the middle of the night on October 12, 2022, at 4138 Hazelhurst Drive, Toledo, Ohio, when the disturbing incident occurred. Sarah had just settled in for the evening, her small apartment complex quiet and still. Around 2:30 a.m., a sudden knock on the door startled her awake. Disoriented and slightly frightened, she reached for her phone and opened the live feed from the doorbell camera. On the screen, a man stood, his silhouette partially obscured by the darkness. What immediately caught Sarah's attention was the gun tucked into his waistband, visible under the dim porch light. He knocked again, louder this time, and Sarah's heart raced as she tried to make out the unfamiliar face. Gathering her courage, she spoke into the intercom. "Who is it?" The man, his voice utterly calm, replied, "It's me." Confusion and fear mingled in Sarah's mind. She didn't recognize him, and something about his demeanor sent a chill down her spine. "I don't know you," she replied, hoping her voice didn't betray her rising fear. Instead of explaining, the man simply waved toward the doorbell camera. It was an odd gesture, one that only deepened Sarah's anxiety. She fell silent, hoping he would leave, but he didn't. Instead, he took a step back, looking down the hall as if waiting for something or someone. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, he turned and began walking away. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, but her relief didn't last long. From the camera's perspective, another man emerged from behind a dumpster just a few feet from her door. He joined the first man, and together they quietly walked around the side of the building. Panic rose in Sarah as she realized they were heading toward the back of her apartment, presumably trying to find another way in. She quickly called 911, her voice shaking as she described what was happening. She heard the faint sound of metal scraping against metal and knew they were trying to unlock her back door. The seconds felt like centuries, but before the men could break in, the distant sound of sirens reached her ears. They must have heard it too, because, without warning, they abandoned their efforts and disappeared into the night. Never open the door to strangers, especially late at night. If someone suspicious is at your door, use your camera or intercom to communicate and call the police if you feel unsafe. Always trust your instincts. If something doesn't seem right, it probably... It was a quiet night in May 2018 at 10,402 W113th Street, Overland Park, Kansas. Jenna, a single mother of two, had just put her children to bed. It had been a long day, and as she lay down to sleep, she never imagined the horror that would unfold in the early morning. Jenna had forgotten to lock her car, a rare oversight in a neighborhood where safety is almost a given. Around 3 a.m., a shadowy figure approached her driveway. The doorbell camera recorded the man carefully checking the car door, discovering that Jenna's SUV was unlocked. With practiced ease, he slipped inside, rummaging through the contents and taking whatever valuables he could find, including Jenna's keys. Satisfied with his loot, the thief slipped away into the darkness. But his night was far from over. Armed with Jenna's keys, he returned a few hours later, this time approaching her front door. The doorbell camera was activated, capturing the chilling moment as the thief tried each key, hoping one would work. Inside, Jenna and her children slept, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking just outside. Fortunately, Jenna's keys did not include the house key. After several failed attempts, the man finally gave up, leaving the house as quietly as he had arrived. It wasn't until the next morning that Jenna realized what had happened. She found her car, ransacked, and immediately checked the doorbell footage. Her blood ran cold as she watched the man try to enter her home. Always lock your car and your home, even in seemingly safe neighborhoods. Keep your keys safe and avoid leaving anything valuable in your car. Consider installing a security system that alerts you to suspicious activity. Your safety comes first. Take every precaution to protect it. On a cool September night in 2021, just after 3 a.m., Tony was suddenly awakened by a persistent knock on his door at 3040 Cleveland Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. Drowsy and confused, he reached for his phone, opening the doorbell camera app out of habit. What he saw on the screen immediately brought him back to full alertness. Two figures standing on the porch, their faces partially obscured by the darkness of their hoodies. One of them was holding a gun. PD, open the door. We need to ask you a few questions. The person at the front barked, his tone authoritative. But something about the situation didn't feel right. Tony's mind raced. Why were the police at his door at this hour? And why hadn't they announced their presence more clearly? He decided to communicate with them through the doorbell speaker. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "KPD, we need to ask you a few questions." The man repeated, shifting his weight impatiently. "Please come to the front door." Tony's instincts told him to stay. "Can I see your badge?" he asked, knowing full well that any legitimate officer would have shown one to him. "I don't need to show you my badge, sir." The man snapped back. His frustration was obvious, and it only added to Tony's suspicions. He continued the conversation for a few more minutes, trying to stall for time while still dialing 911 on his cell phone. "I called the real police," Tony finally announced over the loudspeaker. The two men exchanged a glance before turning and dashing down the street, disappearing into the night. Never open the door to someone claiming to be a police officer without first verifying their identity. Ask to see a badge, and if you have any doubts, call the police directly. Always trust your instincts. If something doesn't seem right, it probably isn't. Stay safe by being cautious and alert. It was a cold night on November 3, 2020, when something truly disturbing happened at 7,864 Cherry Blossom Drive, Littleton, Colorado. Lucy had always felt safe in her suburban home, located in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. But that night, as she lay sleeping, her doorbell camera captured something that would shake her sense of security to its core. At around 2:05 a.m., the camera was activated, triggered by movement on her front porch. The footage showed a man, his face hidden behind a creepy mask, slowly approaching the door. He moved slowly, as if savoring each. When he reached the door, he tried the handle, finding it locked. The mask hid all expression, but there was something undeniably strange about the way he paused, as if considering his next move. Lucy's doorbell had a two-way intercom, but she hadn't woken up enough to notice the intruder. The man hesitated, then knocked lightly on the door. He waited a few seconds before pulling up his sleeve, carefully wiping the doorknob as if trying to erase any trace of his presence. With one last look, he retreated to a car parked across the street. From there, he watched the house for a few minutes before speeding off into the night. The next morning, Lucy checked the doorbell footage out of habit. As she watched the video, her blood ran cold. The man's meticulous wiping of the doorknob and the strange mask sent shivers down her spine. She immediately called the police and reported the incident. The police arrived in time, but despite a thorough search, they found no trace of the intruder. Lucy felt violated and frightened. The mask prevented the police from identifying the man, and the weight in his bag remained a mystery. Was he just an opportunistic criminal, or did he have a darker plan? The uncertainty was unsettling. Story 5. The Arson at 1127 Pecan Street. It was a muggy August night in 2020, and the tranquility of 1127 Pecan Street, Bastrop, Texas, was disrupted by a sinister presence. The clock ticked past 3 a.m., and Carlos, a single father who had worked tirelessly to provide a stable home for his young daughter, was fast asleep in the small but cozy house he had recently purchased. Unbeknownst to him, a malevolent figure was about to shatter his peaceful night. Carlos's doorbell camera, a recent addition he'd installed for extra security, was about to capture an event that would change his life forever. The footage, which would later be reviewed by authorities, showed a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness, carrying a gas canister. The man's face was obscured by the low hood of his jacket, but his movements were methodical and deliberate. As the figure approached the house, the camera's infrared lens illuminated the scene in ghostly green hues. The man began by pouring gasoline generously across the front lawn, creating a treacherous trail of flammable liquid. His actions were calculated, and he took care to cover every possible area where the fire could catch. The gasoline soaked into the wood of the porch steps and the grass below, creating a volatile mixture that would soon ignite. With the gasoline distributed, the man took a step back and produced a match from his pocket. The tiny flame flickered in the cool night air before being tossed onto the gasoline-soaked porch. In a horrifying flash, the gasoline ignited and the flames roared to life, quickly engulfing the front of the house. The fire's fierce heat illuminated the street, casting eerie, dancing shadows across the other houses. Carlos awoke to a cacophony of sounds, crackling flames and the acrid stench of burning wood. Disoriented, he stumbled out of bed, trying to understand what was happening. As he reached the front of the house, the sight of the blazing inferno through the windows was both surreal and terrifying. His heart raced as he realized the danger he and his daughter were in. Desperately, Carlos grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his voice trembling with panic as he reported the fire. "My house is on fire," he shouted, barely able to contain his fear. "Please hurry." Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens grew louder, and the fire department arrived on the scene. The firefighters worked tirelessly to control the blaze, but by the time they managed to put out the flames, significant damage had been done. Two neighboring houses and a vehicle parked on the street had also been caught in the fire's path, their owners watching helplessly as the firefighters battled the flames. The fire was eventually contained, but the damage was extensive. Carlos's front porch was reduced to smoldering ruins, and the heat had warped the exterior of his home. The neighboring properties had suffered from the fire's spread, and the vehicle was a charred husk, miraculously. No one was injured, but the emotional and financial toll was immense. In the days that followed, Carlos grappled with a profound sense of violation and loss. The police launched an investigation into the arson, but the perpetrator remained elusive. Despite the authorities' efforts, the identity of the arsonist was never discovered. Carlos was left to contend with the aftermath of the attack, both physically and emotionally. The community rallied around Carlos, offering support and assistance as he began the arduous process of rebuilding his home. Neighbors organized fundraisers and provided temporary shelter, showing solidarity in the face of the tragedy. Carlos, deeply grateful for the outpouring of help, resolved to take a more active role in community safety. He invested in enhanced security measures for his home, including installing surveillance cameras and motion detectors to deter any future threats. Carlos also became involved in local neighborhood watch programs, using his experience to advocate for increased vigilance and community cooperation. His involvement helped foster a stronger sense of security among his neighbors, as they worked together to prevent such incidents from occurring again. Despite the support and improvements, The memory of that night remained a haunting reminder of how quickly life can change. Carlos's experience underscored the importance of being prepared and proactive in ensuring one's safety and the safety of others. The experience, while traumatic, strengthened his resolve to protect his family and contribute to the safety of his community.